Welcome to another Restory conversation. Today we are joining Rob Bremer, who's been with us. How long have you been with us at Restory, Rob? I don't even.
2 years?
2 years already.
Almost.
You've been such a great addition to our team.
It feels like yesterday.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
You really have been such a great addition to our team. I'm excited to talk with you today.
You.
Rob is a story work coach at Restory, specializes in men, particularly men in their second half of life, meaning 40 and after. Would you say that's second half?
Well, but that's defined. Yeah. Ish. Right.
Okay, we'll get into that more today for sure. But why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
About myself? Yeah.
Outside of
So
work and your title, like who are you? What
outside,
are you
yeah,
into?
who am I? Who
Yeah.
am I? I'm 57, so I'm 40 plus, right? So I'm
Mhm.
definitely in that second half of life.
So you're saying you're well into your
Well
second half of
into,
life?
yes, exactly. Still learning what that means too. So that's part of the journey, part of what we'll talk about a little bit today. So my anniversary, 28th anniversary is Saturday. So I've been married for 28 years. I have 3 kids, twins that are now freshmen in college. So I'm experiencing the whole empty nest thing, season of life. So that's where I am. I live down here south of Denver and I love everything outdoors. So backpacking is probably my favorite outdoor activity, but skiing, trail running, just anything outside.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Colorado's a good place for that.
Colorado is a good place. Yes. I grew up in Ohio.
Whatever bias, but
Yep. I came here for graduate school many years ago and I think I'll stay here.
yeah,
Yeah.
I should not leave after
Yes.
experiencing
Right.
the mountains. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Well, often in this work, as you know, Rob, we're talking stories. So we're getting back into those stories from our past, particularly
Yeah.
stories from our childhood. And I was just with my nieces this past weekend, who are 7 and 3, and I'm called Auntie Lala, and I love it so much. It's just different to be an auntie, versus mom. And I did absolutely spoil them this weekend and
You
bought
should.
presents and toys. And it just had me
Right.
thinking, what were my favorite toys? So that is my
Yeah.
fun question for you to start our time off today. What was your go-to toy as
What
a
was my
kid?
favorite toy? That's really, comes straight to mind. It was Legos or Lego or Legos. Lego, I think. Is the S officially on there? I don't know. But yeah, I loved Lego as a young kid, just having a lot of time spending building Legos and loving what you could do with it. Like you'd get the set, and that had the directions, and so you'd build that, and you're like, all right, now what do I do with it? Right. And so making other things up, which I think is harder to do today because like the Legos that my kids have, each piece is like so specialized. I just had like bricks of different sizes and colors and you could make
Right,
sort of whatever.
right.
And I remember I got into, I don't know how, building boats, like yachts and things like that. And that was
Not
really my
just boats, but
thing.
yachts.
And there was a friend down the street that we just both kind of fell into that somehow. And it was also a good activity, part of my story where you could just do that alone. Like I had my one friend when I was really young that we played Legos and built things. But even then it was kind of like you're building your own thing and then you're kind of playing with it. But the whole activity was really more alone. So I think that's part of the reason why I loved Legos. That individual imagination and creativity and being able to fill your mind and your time doing that. So yeah,
Yeah. The
Lego.
Legos, there's something about, I think you said it, like the creativity, but also the imagination that goes along with that.
Right. Yes. And I saw a video just a couple days ago where it was funny because the kid had like this young kid had all these like random pieces of Legos. I was like, I don't know what to do with these. He's going to throw them away. And his dad's like, oh, no, 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 don't do that. He took a picture of it and there's like an AI app that will tell you what you could build with it.
No way.
It's like, what? That's like,
I
come on,
don't know how I feel about that.
use your imagination. I'm like,
Yeah, like you just don't
I wonder
want
what
it
kind
to
of
take
boats I
away
could have
from
built with an AI app.
right. I'm like, what? Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I don't feel like they had a ton of sets when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
The big
some, but it was really just the big it was a bucket at that time, like the
sometimes, yeah, you
bucket
just get a bucket of bricks.
of bricks and
Yeah.
build stuff. Yeah, and now there's all sorts. So do you do any Lego now, like, as an adult, especially with all, like, the new sets that they've made
I
for adults?
don't. I did for a while when my boys would get Lego sets that were just a little bit above their, kind of their age, and so it helped them with that. And
Mhm.
to me, that actually was just a frustrating process because you're always trying to figure out where your mistake was in the directions.
Yes.
Back,
It's the worst when you have to go, like, 3 pages backwards. I'm like,
you're
"I
like, where did I
it's this way,"
forget this
and
piece?
apparently it's needed in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
So
that.
no, not so much today.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I was curious. Like, Rob's that doesn't surprise me. It was Lego
Lego.
for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Tell me, I ask everybody this as we engage in these restory conversations.
Mhm.
Why do you do this work of story
Mm.
work? What's
Yeah,
your
good
why?
question. Yeah, why do I do this? I you know I think why I do this. There's a lot of different ways. There's several different ways I guess I could explain it, but I think the one that probably seems most relevant, I guess, is just that it was not all that long ago for me that I began to experience a group of men who were asking me more about my story and were becoming curious about what it was about my past, my family of origin that made me the way that I am. And always had this kind of thought about like, there's all these things about me that I don't like. I don't like that I'm so reserved. I don't like that I'm so shy. I don't like that I don't speak up when I think I have something to say. I don't like the fact that I don't feel like I belong in another group oftentimes. And through that experience began really understanding that the name for that, the name is shame and what that is and what that looks like and sort of where it began. And so for me, someone who's actually been in the field of mental health and well-being and behavioral health for many years in my career,
Mhm.
but actually experiencing that in a really new way for me kind of led to this like what what is this? And not only just then for myself, but it just began to stir something in me in my later years, later decades in life. Like,
Mhm.
is there something more? What else could there be? And led me to a trip in Ireland through a group that's very close to Restory Counseling Restoration Project. Chris Bruno and some other men. We journeyed to Ireland really to explore kind of some of these questions. And I came away from that trip like there's something else, there's something more for me. I didn't know yet what. And just through a course of conversations came to Restory, like I said, almost 2 years ago, and just wanting to be able to offer what I had been offered to other men.
Mm.
And to do that in a space where it's safe, it's confidential, it's we can have those conversations that I think a lot of men don't have a place to have them and don't have someone else who's asking them really important questions about who they are, about their past, about their family of origin, about their shame, and where all of the things, the strategies that they've come to deploy that work for a time, but begin to not work very well. So that's why I'm doing this. Yeah,
What's your hope for men
yeah,
as you engage,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
this space with them? I know you work with couples too, but,
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
particularly with men,
Yeah.
what's your hope for them?
I hope to I think as I think about it, I think it's stemming the epidemic of isolation and loneliness. Is that as men, it's pretty I guess it's stereotypical, but I think it's so common for men where relationships when we're younger in high school and in college and even sort of out of college, young singles, relationships with other men, maybe there's not a lot of depth to them, but it comes much just organically. Like I that's my experience where I had a great group of guys in college and even outside, after college, we stuck together and we knew each other really, really well through that experience. And then,
Mhm.
you get married, you have kids, all the activities of life, you start a career and you realize all the responsibilities that I have now to provide for a family and do all of those things. It's like all of a sudden you realize, where did those relationships that I had in my 20s, where did they go? And so that's my hope for men, is to equip them to be able to re-engage in authentic relationships and a brotherhood of other men who, I think, as hard as it seems to do and as scary and as risky as it seems, I think every man wants that, wants a depth of relationship with other men, wants to be known. I think it's Kurt Thompson who says we all come into this world looking for someone looking for us. That's right. I want to help men be found. And I know from my own story, that's terrifying to be found, because the lie, but the fear is, if I'm found, I won't be accepted. And so what they want is something else. So I'll give them what I think they want. And that, right, that's a sort of a self-defeating thing. You're not going to have that acceptance and belonging if you're giving them something that's not who you are. And then I think we do that long enough, we don't even know who we are. And so that's the process what we're talking about at Restory, is going back and finding, who are you? Who did God actually design you to be? What
Yeah.
is your first story? We lose sight of that.
Yeah. I mean, even today, I was speaking with someone that said something about men, like sort of an overgeneralization, but men, they don't care about the emotional things. They don't talk deeply.
That was the comments.
That was the comment.
That generalization. Yeah.
And I was just taken back, and I was like, oh, actually, and I actually used that quote. I said, every human, regardless of gender,
Yeah.
comes into this world looking for someone, looking for us, that
Yeah.
has a
Yeah.
deep God-given desire to be known
Right.
and loved, right?
Right. And I think as men, we accept that statement. Oh, I'm just a guy. I don't think too deeply. I don't feel too deeply.
Mm-hmm.
We're not capable of deeper emotion and relationships. And what a tragedy.
It's such a
Because
tragedy because it perpetuates the problem. And as you mentioned, I can imagine the loneliness.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So as you're meeting with men, and 2 years in, and then also being involved with Restoration Project and these groups of men, what are you noticing as far as like themes, patterns?
Yeah, beyond the pattern of isolation and loneliness. I think it's just, I think the other theme is, I've, you know, come to rely on these survival strategies, on this way of coping, way of getting through life, the way of relating, the way that I attach to other people in relationships, or avoid, the way as a man I avoid deeper emotions or things that oftentimes they're coming in to see me because the strategies just aren't working. Like, what is happening now? My spouse is really upset with me. I'm not connecting with her. I find that my kids are more and more distant from me. I don't have any really meaningful relationships, and they're struggling. They're, I think, oftentimes, yeah, sometimes sort of powering up and sort of that stereotypical macho taking over, but I think so often that they're powering down and they're withdrawing, and there's this quiet misery that they're experiencing. Um, and they come in looking for solutions, looking for, sometimes, hoping for a pill. And I don't do pills, but hoping for a tip, a technique, a step program
Yeah.
to fix behaviors. And so that, right, the
Mhm.
symptom then for a lot of times is addictions
Yeah.
and all kinds of behaviors and ways of relating that are destructive. And they want ways to stop doing that. Like, I'm drinking too much. I'm addicted to porn. I'm eating too much, or really, really unhealthy. Help me figure out those behavioral patterns. And really what they're asking is, I don't understand what's really happening with me. I don't understand what's really the waters underneath. And so that's, I think where I hope men will go is have the courage and integrity to go deeper than just, not drink so much, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to do those
Mhm.
things. But, I was just meeting with a guy just earlier this week, and he's like, I've tried, he was saying this exact, I've tried over and over and over again to stop with the pornography. He's like, as much as, and treating it, it's a sin problem that I need to repent of and get through. It was a big light bulb moment for him. And she's like, yeah, but my shame is driving this. And it's not the web filter that's going to fix this. It's understanding the cycle of shame that's driving him back to this time and again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just the difference between like symptom or behavior management
Right.
only goes so far. I often describe it. It feels like a
Mhm.
band-aid on a gunshot wound. Like it might like help a little bit, but not for long. Like it's not sustainable if you're not getting in there and understanding where
Right.
the root of the wound and why you're bleeding out,
Exactly.
why
Exactly.
behind
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And even on the opposite end, with wives that I meet, that are dealing with husbands that are addicted to porn, to encourage them to be thinking through, yeah, this is much, much deeper, right?
Right.
Than, yeah, putting covenant eyes on your computer. Like it might help, like, be a little like speed bump, but
Yeah.
if there's
Yeah.
not a curiosity of what's going on there.
Exactly. Right. That's a really, really good place to go. When you talked about just
Mhm.
being curious, right?
Yeah.
Yes, use the web filters. Yes, do all those things. Have the accountability partner,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can get some space from those behaviors, but have some curiosity about what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
Why am I drawn to this addiction? What brings me here? Right?
Mhm.
Am I actually avoiding? What am I denying that's going on?
So I've often heard you talk about sort of this first half and second half of
Mhm.
life. What do you mean by that? And what is the catalyst, or like I'm thinking of the in between. What's in between the first
Mhm.
half and the second half?
In between, I think that the transition begins whenever it begins. Like you said, what's midlife? Like, yes, 40 is probably like your midlife crisis happens, in your 40th birthday. But I think it happens sooner for some men, and I think more of the case it happens a lot later for
Yeah.
other even later than that. For me, I think it did happen later than 40. But I think it's that the transition begins when you start, I think, with some recognition that my survival strategies aren't working so well anymore for me. And that thought begins to creep in, looking ahead, like, if I have 40 or 50 years behind me, how many do I have ahead? Like, that recognition, I'm on the downward slope now.
Oh,
It's still maybe, 30 or 40 or 50 years away. It still is a long time, but you begin to have that thought for the first time that when you're 20, you didn't think about, but you were pretty much invincible at that age. But you begin to have that question about what happens. And the question, like, who would come to my funeral? Would anyone care that I'm not here anymore? Right? Like, what the question there is, what impact am I having? What's my legacy? And really, then when I begin to think about it for myself, and hopefully for other men too, it's not an impact in terms of look at this business that I built or whatever accomplishment that I achieved. What were the relational impacts that who did I impact? How did they impact my kids, my wife, those that I'm in close relationship with? I think so. I think that's the beginning, asking that question. And I
and
think,
the majority of 20-year-olds, right, are not asking that. I think there are
no,
some for sure
no,
that are like
yeah,
just deep and can go there, but in
right,
general, you're not thinking of your end
right.
life yet.
Yeah, and it's not to say that that's wrong. I think it's a necessary progression, right?
Yeah.
That when you're in your 20s and 30s, as men, we're typically, building a career, we're building a family, we're getting settled, we're conquering our world, right? We're out there doing all of the things. We're building the kingdom for Jesus. We're doing all of those things, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're taking a hold of life. And I think all of those things at that stage in our life are actually well and good and necessary. And then we come to the point where, like, okay, what else? Like, I put too much of my identity in my career, in my title, in my status, in my bank account, in my 401k. I've got all those things now, or maybe I don't. I failed at them. Either way, you still begin asking the question, what else, right? What is there something more?
Yeah, just that deep, like there has to be something more than this
Yes. Yes.
kind of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that like the stereotype around midlife crisis, especially for men, like
Mhm.
when I think of midlife crisis for men, I'm thinking like you go buy the Corvette or motorcycle, or,
Yeah.
you go date a 20-year-old woman. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. The stereotype.
I don't know what men do, but there's some stereotype there. And so how would you define midlife crisis? Because that's not always the case of what
Yeah,
midlife
that's not
crisis
always the case, right? So for sure,
is.
sometimes, right? That is, but I think that's truly a stereotype. I think for most men, it's maybe one of two ways. Maybe there are more, but I'm thinking two ways. They double down. They recommit to work.
Mm,
They're like, okay, the kids are out of the house. They're off at college. I have more time. I'm gonna invest in a new business or a new thing, or
mm,
can recommit to my career, or they just kind of just coast along, that they quietly into maybe addictions that aren't noticeable, right? Maybe there's maybe more alcohol than should be, or just watching TV and movies and social media, and they just numb,
mm,
right? They just withdraw from society and from life, which I think then ultimately is when we think of like the stereotypical idea of retirement,
yeah.
right? That I've done everything. I'm done. I've crossed the finish line. I can go, retire to my condo in Florida or whatever and play golf, and I don't have to contribute anymore. I don't have anything to do. And I think I can't remember his name. It was an Australian guy who it was a podcast, and he was talking about the idea of retirement, like how we retire a car, and like what we need is like a new direction, a new thing that we're doing that helps us find like what is my impact, what is my meaning,
Mm,
where am I actually adding value to those around me.
mm. Yeah, it almost sounds like the deeper heart cry of a midlife crisis
Yeah.
is like a rediscovering of self.
Right.
And that can come out with the Corvette, but it can also come
Yeah.
out in sort of this loneliness and despair and like the caving in, like
Yeah.
you were talking about.
Right.
The
Exactly.
quiet misery, that man, you've said that a couple
Mhm.
times as we've chatted
Mhm.
about this, and
Mm.
I sense that, right?
Yeah.
With men too that I've worked with and known, like the quiet misery and the loneliness there.
Mhm. And I know that, part of my story, and part of what I didn't share before about how did I end up at Restory
Mm,
was, I had worked for the same company for almost 20 years. And I thought I was like, oh, I'm the successor to the CEO who's retiring, right?
mm,
In the traditional sense, leaving that. And that didn't work out.
mm,
And I think if I now were CEO of this company, it would have been another 10 years probably before I would have come to this point. That would have been, I think, in a sense, my doubling down. Of course, I have purpose and meaning. I'm a CEO,
yeah,
and not to say that that's bad, right?
yeah.
That's not a good direction to go, but that would have been the result for me for sure.
Something about not getting that was the catalyst
Hmm.
for you
That was
to
a big catalyst.
sort of
Yeah,
explore your story and go on
right.
this like inward journey,
Very
asking
much.
the real questions.
The promotions, the advancement had come easily. It just was part like, oh, this is just the way things go, right? You work for a few years, you get the next promotion in the company, you get more, a higher salary, you get more responsibility, you get a better title, you get a bigger office. And so that had just continued to happen until it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is a like I think almost like a gut punch, or even when I think about, there's an idea called the critical journey or stages of faith, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
much about progressing in your faith journey that there's a stage that's actually hitting a wall, which is
Yeah.
not fun. Hurts.
Right.
But it is also the catalyst to the inward journey to really discover. the God that dwells within you.
Right.
And I'm hearing similar in this like midlife crisis. There's almost like a wall. Do you feel like there usually has to be an event like you went through, like, oh, this was all working until it's not anymore for
That
that catalyst to
yeah,
happen?
that's a good that's a really good question. I guess I don't know for certain. Is that necessary? I
Mm,
think that it is. And use the word necessary. Richard Rohr calls it the necessary suffering that has to
yeah.
occur to help one sort of begin to make that transition into this the second half. And so I guess it's possible. Philosophically, is it possible? I suppose. But
Mm,
I don't think it's likely that I think there is some, call it a crisis of faith or some event or something in our lives that cause us to begin to ask those questions.
yeah.
And so I think without
Mm,
that sort of event or series of events, and it doesn't need to be anything big, it doesn't need to be,
right.
not getting the job or getting fired or
Getting a divorce
getting
or,
a
yeah,
divorce or a loss of a loved one. Certainly, those are things, that you would think of. But I think it can just be a small, quiet, questioning of what am I doing? Who am I?
yeah. Yeah, even going back to addictions, I'm thinking like, oh, this served me and this worked. This
Yeah,
helped me cope or
yeah,
survive in some form or fashion. And
yeah.
now it's not working. It's almost
Right,
like, anything that's like House of Cards falls,
right,
right? Like
right.
it's crumbling now. Like
Yeah,
what I used to do and how I used to, I don't know, cope
yeah, right.
doesn't work. And
So
so now
yeah,
we're left with that question, right?
so I think it has to be something. I don't think it has to be something sort of dramatic.
Yeah.
I guess, right?
Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
But if there's not something that something needs to stop you along the way in some way, shape, or form. It feels
Right.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is, typically when that happens, especially as, even if you're married and you have kids and the kids are starting to grow up and get out of the house, you're not as busy too. So it's not
right.
just like there's more time to like be reflective.
There
And
is more
so
time, and
even just that can
it
be the catalyst, right?
it can, yes, very much. And I would say I'm still in that journey because I find myself exactly that, where there is more time. And even just this morning, my wife was like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm okay." She's like, "You're just okay?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm still, I guess, struggling with the amount of space I have.
Yeah.
Like, is that okay? Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?" So I think that that's a really hard thing when, we're so used to just go, go, go.
Yeah.
And my barometer for my value and worth is the number of emails and meetings that I do. And I talk to people. I do some consulting sort of in my old world still to
Yeah.
help just pay the bills.
Yeah.
And, the typical response, well, how you doing? Oh, I'm so busy, so busy. Right. Like, I'm like, oh,
Mm.
and I'm like, I don't know what to say. And I'm
Sometimes that's a
like,
badge of honor.
it's a badge of honor. And I
And
don't,
then you're left with like, I'm not.
yeah, I fit in the club. So,
Mm.
and then if I, then I'm like, I'm sad for you that that's the case, that that's how you know,
Mhm.
and, jobs and things require that. I get it, right? Like some things just require more of you than others, but still it's epidemic, right? In our world, especially I think as men, but it's not limited to men.
Yeah, I was just
Just that
thinking of so many women, for them, once the kids leave too, equally impactful for both men and women.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
for, so many people, their lives revolve around their kids and their activities. And so when
right.
they're gone,
Yeah.
you have that space,
What do we do?
right? And literal space in your house. Like, I can't imagine like the quietness.
I know.
I'm kind of jealous of you right now. Space,
The
quiet.
thing that I like the most, well, there's a lot of things, and there's things that I totally miss, right? But is it the food that I'm counting on being in the fridge is still there when I go to get it.
That's amazing.
It's not gone.
Stop con.
I
Yeah,
have to
I
go
feel
hungry
that.
for potato chips, and it's in someone's room.
Mhm. Yeah, or like, I mean, that hits home because I literally had a half a Jimmy John's last week that disappeared, and I'm like, "I was
Yeah,
saving that for
I'm
lunch."
saving that for my lunch. Come on.
So, I
Yeah,
just kinda wanna wrap up and end with sort of asking, like, maybe what can men expect as they sit with you, and both like individually,
Mm,
and I know you host a couple groups too, a sage
yep,
group and a men's
yep.
story work group. I'm just wondering, like, what they can they anticipate and expect?
I think the most important thing is my presence with
Mm,
them. I think a lot of us have not experienced the kind and curious presence of another man, and
mm,
so I think that's really the biggest thing, and to be asking questions about your own story, right? There's just a lot of like, I don't know how many times in a week that I ask the question, tell me more about that. What was that like for you?
yeah.
Right? That we get beyond just the tell
Mm,
me your story, like when were you, where you were born and how many siblings you had, and and all of that. But what was it really like for you to be in your family?
mm,
Like, tell me more about what that was like,
mm,
how you survived some of the things, and even in those stories where there isn't, you know, big trauma and things like that, there still are harm that occurs, right? Because we're all fallen, imperfect people. And
mm,
so we cause harm to those around us. And so as a child in a family, you don't escape that. And so
yeah.
let's talk about that really,
Mm,
and how impactful it was. And I think it's right. We come to believe a narrative where that really didn't impact me that much. And so that's a lot of what I think it's like to sit with me. So let's explore that.
mm,
Let's name some things that let's
mm,
name them for what they are,
mm,
call them for what they were, and understand how you had to survive that, and how you what you had to do as a young person, how it's not really working for you today. So
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and may I add,
Mhm.
just because, of my relationship with you, I think, sitting across from you, it will be safe. There won't be pressure to go faster than you're,
Mhm.
like, a
Mhm.
pace that you're not ready to go yet,
Right, right.
right? But to gently, kindly
Mhm.
pull back all the masks that, these men have had to wear,
Mhm.
and what's underneath that,
Yep, yeah.
that is safe to reveal
Mm.
from your
Thank
presence.
you.
So, yeah.
Thank you for those words.
It would be an honor for any guy to sit with you, regardless of age, but particularly as they're heading into that midlife and starting to have the deeper questions.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for your time today. We'll put a link in our bio for Rob's info and for both groups. And
It's coming up. Yeah, starting both next month.
okay,
Mhm.
so there's still a couple openings left, so get in while you can. And then I think you have a couple spots for individual right now too. So, but you can always head over to restory.life if you have any more questions. But thanks, Rob, for hanging out today.
Thank you so much. What a
Yeah,
joy. Thanks.